Hi everybody and welcome back to my startup journal. I am Abraham, and this week we are talking about the ethical responsibility of founders, which I know feels like a bit of a heavy topic, but in the wake of all of my social media streams being overrun by FaceApp with these aged photos, it felt like a bit of a relevant topic. And this week I wanted to start off with a bit of a story. So for those of you who don't know, I am Canadian and I am an engineer. And in the fourth year of school for Canadian engineers, we basically go through this thing called the ritual of the calling of an engineer. And for an engineer, this is like way more important than graduation. And basically it's this cloak and dagger type ceremony where only either your fellow students that are going through it or existing engineers are allowed in, as much as my mother detested that fact. And you basically go in and you take this oath to society. You take this oath that as the people that are responsible for the built world that surrounds us, be it the water that you drink or the car that you drive in or the electricity that you use to power almost everything in our lives, as one of those engineers that has that responsibility, you're supposed to remember that as you are designing a bridge or as you are designing a water treatment plant, and the fact that you can have a significant impact on people's lives if you aren't careful. And basically what happens is you come out of that ceremony and you're all wearing these fancy iron rings. And the idea behind the iron ring is that, in effect, it crosses everything that you write. So you wear it on the pinky finger of your dominant hand, and anything that you sign, anything that you write, your iron ring is there as a reminder of that oath that you had said. Now, the iron ring ceremony is a little out of date. I mean, it was written in 1922. So I mean, from the fact that we don't exactly write and sign everything with our hands anymore, so it doesn't directly apply to have it on your pinky finger of your dominant hand, through more so to the fact that it is so ingrained in our institutional processes. So what I mean by that is that in the past, engineers would have to go through multiple years of education, through to accreditation boards, be mentored by a senior engineer before they ever had the opportunity to actually sign off on a design that had that direct influence or impact on society. And things have changed quite significantly. It's just not the case anymore that that is required, as some of the most influential engineers of our time are actually university dropouts who decided to break the structure, decided to break societal norms for the sake of being innovative and disrupting and moving at a faster pace than anyone has in innovation cycles before. And this is amazing because it has ushered in the new industrial revolution. It has allowed the creation of tools that we could have never dreamt possible or only thought of in Star Trek. But that innovation at breakneck speeds also opens up a Pandora's box of problems that we're pretty much unprepared for. And this brings me back around to FaceApp. So there's a good chance that either you or somebody that you know has tried out this app. Any of those photos that you've seen where people are aging themselves and then posting them on social media comes from this app. And I'm guessing that in that process, you didn't necessarily realize that you were, in effect, granting a Russian company, and I quote, "perpetual, irrevocable, non-exclusive, royalty-free, worldwide, fully paid, transferable, sub-licensable license to use, reproduce, modify, adapt, publish, translate, create derivative works from, distribute, publicly perform, and display your user content and any name, username, or likeness provided in connection with your user content." So, lots of legal jargon, very, very detailed. And in effect, what it means is, although you still technically own your content, you have licensed it to this company for whatever they want to do with it. From training their new AI based off of the 150 million images that they have, through to putting it on the side of a billboard. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to get into the specifics of their privacy statement and terms and conditions, but over 100 million people have downloaded this app, which just speaks to the fact that there is a significant issue around digital literacy and awareness of what is actually being done with our data in the first place. Now, as innovation accelerates, I've had many conversations with fellow founders, with people that work in the world of policy, to try and talk about what solutions do we have to actually structure this, to be able to enable innovation, not cutting it off with overreaching legislation, while at the same time as protecting society and protecting privacy. And it's a chicken and egg. It's a back and forth thing. And I've looked at it from many different angles. I started off thinking about, okay, well, are governments and legislation and institutions the solution here? But Cambridge Analytica was a pretty good example of the fact that lawmakers around the world, not just in the US, lawmakers in many of the hearings that happened with Facebook as a result of Cambridge Analytica, are incredibly unaware of how a digital society and a technology-based economy actually work and run. And in effect, any legislation, at least probably in the coming 5 years, is going to be too little too late, because there's just a lack of understanding, there's a lack of structure, there's a lack of institutional knowledge on how these things actually work. Now, the next question that I asked myself was the solution users? Is it that we have to talk to the people who are actually using this technology on a daily basis, who have these cell phones in their hands and that can vote with their eyes, with their time, with their data, and with their wallets as to who they give this information to? And FaceApp being downloaded over 100 million times is a pretty good example of the fact that digital literacy is going to be a significant problem for the foreseeable future. So you end up pretty stuck. And I had the opportunity about 2 weeks ago to see a guy named Chris Messina speak at Tech Open Air and Factory Berlin. And he's the inventor of the hashtag. And he talked one of his presentations about the future of social media, and another one about creating technology for better humans. And in both of them, he got to this point around the responsibility of founders. And it really got me to thinking back to being an engineer, the Iron Ring ceremony, that oath that I took to society, and how founders, to a certain extent, are the engineers of the new digital world that is popping us up around us, and that they don't have the same structure and support that engineers of the physical world that have been trained and brought through these institutions necessarily do. And that founders really may be, in the short term at least, the solution to this problem, because founders exist at the heart of the innovation cycle. They are the ones coming up with these ideas, the ones that are putting them into action, the ones that are going to get the money to actually launch them into society. And if we can teach and train and support founders with the tools that they need to critically think about how their solutions may have both positive and negative impacts on society, then we may very well be able to prevent the next Cambridge Analytica from occurring, because it will have been thought of in advance rather than retroactively. So, to other founders, my challenge to you is the challenge that I put on myself. It's to think of my responsibility to society in the solutions that I'm actually creating, be it bias in artificial intelligence, or data privacy from the data that your users have trusted you with and that have given you to actually be able to perform the service or solution that you're offering them. We have a responsibility as the engineers of the new digital world, just as the engineers of the physical world did and continue to have, to support and to protect the society that we actually live in. I also put out to the startup community, to VCs, to incubators, to co-working spaces, that you also have a responsibility in this to support founders and to be able to give them the tools to understand and critically think about the solutions that they're building in the first place. It's a big topic, so if you have thoughts or comments or questions, please feel free to comment below. And as per usual, stay tuned for another episode coming in the next couple of weeks of My Startup Journal.